preparing to live stream the meeting.
Yeah, Lori just said she doesn't have a kill switch. So-
All right, so this should be, so I'm gonna get out of this so it doesn't echo. Okay, so, yeah. So what I need to do is not be in that,
Steve, do you have a friend named Irving that was logging in?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
that's what I'm gonna do. Okay, I muted the YouTube live for myself, so it's not
Okay.
gonna echo. Hopefully that will end that. And now I'm gonna go back to, okay. I guess I can also simultaneously record to the cloud, just in case there's something wrong.
Yes.
Does something wrong with the YouTube, we'll have it there too. But it is recording live to YouTube.
All right.
to
Everybody
our-
will need to acknowledge the cloud.
Yep, just did.
Yes.
iPad number 2 disappeared. Okay.
Oh, But there's an Irving.
Yeah, and not
Hi,
sure
Steve.
who that is yet.
Hi, Steve.
Hi.
I'm going to ask Irving what his last name is.
I don't know.
I'm going to ask him to unmute just for a moment so he can respond. No, it's not.
Oh, there's unmuted.
Okay. There's Carol. I'll let her in.
I just-
Irving, can you just let us know who you are, please? No, I guess not. All right. I'm going to mute him then.
Okay.
Hello, Carol. Carol, everyone's going to be muted until there's, if there's time for a Q&A at the end, we will do that.
I was going to have everyone off screen too, so that
Yes.
if you could block out your video,
Yeah,
you can look at each other for a few more minutes, but at 8 when we start, we'll block out everyone's video.
I did take a couple of naps today, so if you want to run late, it's okay.
Well, I did not.
Well, that's because you're president of a synagogue. I'm retired happily.
Right.
So.
Actually, I was not myself earlier today because I had that second vaccine yesterday. Ooh.
But you're okay now.
Which vaccine does she have?
Which vaccine do you have
That
now?
Moderna, but that second one didn't like me last night.
Yeah, we had both gotten Pfizer, and the second day we were a little draggy, but
We got
nothing.
injected with
We
water.
didn't have anything.
We got injected with water.
I hope
too
not.
bad. It should have been white wine.
Yeah.
Would be
Hi,
good.
Sam.
That's
We
Sam.
just see the top of your head, Sam.
Where is Sam?
He's
there.
He
He,
looks like he's in the Brotherhood office.
Forehead right now.
he will adjust. There he is.
There he is.
Yay.
Hi, Sam.
Hi, Sam.
Ooh,
Okay, that's okay. We're all going to be, everyone's going to be muted and off screen.
Camera, right.
Dark, off camera.
You didn't nap?
20 people are in at this point.
Not very many. It's
Not very
not
many.
8 o'clock and everyone's
Right.
watching Jeopardy.
Right.
And Steve, this is Jewish time.
That's
I wonder
right.
who Sparky is. That was my
I know who
mother's
Sp-
name
Sparky-
a long time ago, but I don't think this is, nope, that's not her. Who is
That's a
this?
friend. I know who she is. That's,
You can come
Hi,
up to
Karen.
here.
Does anybody watch Stitzel?
who?
Stitzel on Netflix?
No.
No, I watched a
you
few of them when
should.
it first started.
Oh, well, you can watch it anytime. But anyway, season 3 starts March 25th.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Jane.
Hi, Jane.
Hi, Jane.
How are you, Karen?
I'll wait till we get started. Hi, Jane.
Welcome, everybody. I just want to let everyone know that everyone's going
Hi, Ruth.
to be off screen once we start, and we are recording this.
Lynn, could you tell me the web page for the gala, because I want to do a little plug for the gala. What is that for the donations? If
Call Betty or Lynn.
All right, tell them to call the office. To call the office.
Call the office, because
that's fine.
it's too slow sometimes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank
fine.
you. Thank you. We were logging people in until 6:15 tonight, and then we threw in the towel for the evening.
Was it
And
a half a day?
Steve Tamber, you're doing Torah study this Shabbat, correct?
I would say yes, if you're
Yes.
happy with my performance today. If
Okay.
you're not,
Well,
maybe not.
I just wanted I want to tell everybody to tune into that because
Oh, yes.
you'll be doing that. So
Yes, I am absolutely prepared. There's so much stuff in my library that we may have to stay till, let's see, about 12:30 my time. I mean, there's too much to talk about.
Well, it's just going up and down Mount Sinai is what it is. Climb up and climb down and
Judy
climb up.
Herman.
Hey, Doreen. No, we're
hi, Doreen. Hi, Judy. Hi, Harriet.
Hi,
we'll-
everyone.
Hi, everyone.
it should be interesting. Hi, Judy.
Everyone can unmute for a moment.
Yeah,
And
before
once we
8,
get
yeah.
started, we'll mute everyone.
Right.
Good.
Steve, I will be your host for the Devar Torah. I'll be the Zoom host. I already sent the email invitation last night, and I'll send a
Okay.
reminder Friday night.
Okay, because I actually have, I think my friend Sparky is going to attend, and I think my my friend Ina is going to attend as well.
Great.
And I see that our daughter just came on.
Yes, I
Yep.
see
Yeah.
that.
You can let her in. She's not Zoom bombing.
I did. Yes.
She's in.
Yeah, good.
Yes.
Yes,
I'm
you-
not inviting her to the Torah study because she knows too much. It's not fair.
She may have to correct you once or twice. I know.
There's Elaine Faber.
Hi, Elaine.
Hi, Elaine.
Hi, Dr. Tamber Rosenaw, mommy. I know you're
there.
busy being a
And
mom.
there's
too.
Ina. Okay, everyone can unmute themselves until we start the
And Ina's on.
program.
Hi, Ina.
Hi,
Hi,
Ina.
Ina.
Hi.
She's connecting to audio.
Not yet. Getting there.
His daughter? No, Carolyn's.
Hi, Steve and Lori.
Karen.
Hi, Doreen.
How
are you?
Oh, I didn't see Lori off to the side. Hi, Lori.
I'm here, but I'm
See
gonna
you
be
now.
off screen.
I see you now.
Yeah, I'm just
Hey, Bill.
technical support.
Yeah, she's technical support in case I forget something or can't figure out how the computer works. So,
Hi, Sam and Marie.
Hello, Rabbi.
Hello. Hello, Mom.
Just want to let everyone know we are recording. If you see that pop on your screen as you log in, you
Right.
just have to acknowledge.
I don't know who BCBPB is.
I'm about to find out.
She's too low. It's can't see anything.
I see a finger.
Elaine Faber?
She's muted.
Right there, I saw her.
who is that?
No, look at, she should
Yeah, you need to sit up
need
high
to come up.
to the
She
lower.
needs to Come up, sit on the telephone book.
Stephen, Laurie, is Toby Ruff a friend of yours?
Yes.
She's just joining now.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Yes.
Elaine Farber, adjust your screen or sit up higher.
Hey,
Sit up
Toby.
higher, Elaine.
And we don't see this BCBPB person. I
What?
see
It's a hand.
There's a hand in front of the camera.
The other
Ah.
way. Little more. Nope. Yep. Yep. That's
There
better.
we are. Okay,
That's
okay.
better. Perfect.
And
Right
Toby,
there.
we don't see your face. Toby, if you can adjust your camera so we can see you.
Oh, right. We only see. There we go.
Hello.
Good, that's good. And we
Thank you,
don't see,
Toby.
Steve and Laurie, we don't see your daughter Karen.
I guess her camera's not on.
I don't
That's
know.
okay. We're going to go to.
We're feeding two kids, one of whom is very, very young, so you probably won't see video.
Oh, maybe we could get to see the baby later on.
Oh, I'd love to see the
Later.
baby.
Nice.
Maybe we could arrange that if she's up. We'll text her. Lori will text her.
Well, that would be wonderful. We get to
Oh,
see little
okay, there we-
Zamira.
Oh, okay. It's feeding time apparently at the farm.
Your
Okay.
son-in-law came on to say that a minute
Hi,
ago.
Sherry.
Yeah, I didn't hear him. Lori did. Thank you. Thank you,
Mhm.
Jane.
You might be interested. Marjorie Marcus invited Estelle and I to watch her presentation for the Levis JCC. And I didn't know where that was. They told me it was in Boca Raton.
It
And
is.
so I did join it on Tuesday afternoon. They had over 100 people attending
Wow.
on
Yeah.
Zoom.
Yeah, that's quite a facility. If you ever have a chance to go there,
It,
you go down. I forget the name of the road. It's only 6 months. Lions
it's
Road. You
off
go down
of
95th
Glades,
Street.
it's off of Glades Road.
Yeah, off of Glades and 95th.
95th, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's actually on the same campus as Sinai Residences.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, and the Hebrew
Yeah.
school out there, the
It's
Jewish
also
center.
the same as the Sandler Center.
Yep.
Yeah. It,
Okay,
yeah,
and
the program was hosted by the Sandler Center.
Lynn,
Yes.
Robert Cantor is a friend of ours, Les Brown as well.
Great.
Good.
Eric Adams is a friend of ours most of the time. I saw
Diane Lando. Diane Lando, is there, yeah.
And
They're
Landau.
friends.
Hi, guys. Rose is, hi, Rachel.
Hello.
Hi, Rose.
There's Betty.
Hi, Betty.
There's Betty. Hi,
Hello.
Betty.
Betty, did you just get a haircut?
Finally.
Yes,
looks
yes.
nice.
it
Yes.
is.
Good.
Very nice.
I like
Needed
your hair
haircut.
short. I love your hair
Yeah.
short like that.
Looks nice.
Thank you.
Okay, so,
Sid, why did you say Mark
That's
Sickles?
not Mark Sickles, though.
Yeah, Mark Sickles, that's not Mark
That's
Sickles.
not Mark.
No,
Not-
Mark Sickles, change your name.
That's Sid.
you're muted.
That's Sid.
There has been,
Okay.
it's fine.
Is that better now? I'm just going to move it so you can see
Right.
Helene too.
It's
Right.
fine,
Yes.
Sid.
I think you just want to be younger, Sid.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Helene.
Hi, Donna.
I,
Oh, there's Rose Feinberg. Rose,
Yep.
I'm seeing you in person. Jane,
Hello, Steve.
you're muted. Rose,
you're muted, Rose. We can't hear
Hey,
you.
Jay. Hi, Jay.
Hi, Rabbi.
We're planning to
Hello.
have Rose Feinberg for one of our lectures next season.
Yeah, we invited her.
Hi,
Hi,
Lori.
Rose.
Hi,
You
Lori.
did a great job
Hi,
today.
Steve
Hi, Jay.
Sapoznik.
Hi, Diane. Hi, Jay.
We have
Steve
several
Sapoznik.
Steves on.
Yep.
I see Steve Sapoznik, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm 34.
If you forget anyone's name, guess Steve or Judy, and you'll have a good high percentage of getting it.
Lynn, do you need anyone else to help watch the screens?
I think we'll be fine. Thank you for asking, Jane.
Okay, so what we're going to do is ask that if everyone could please mute yourselves and block out your video for now until we're done with the interview, except for, of course, Steve Tamber. And as people come in, Lynn is co-host, so she will let people in and immediately mute and black out anyone who may be seen. So we will do that as we start. So if we could all do that. we'll turn off the videos. And we are recording both to the cloud for Zoom, the Zoom cloud, and also to YouTube. And I apologize to the YouTube viewers who are seeing this after the fact because they had about 20 minutes to scroll through. That I started it early because I didn't want to forget to do that once we started. So I did it when I remembered to do so. So let's all turn off our videos for now, until we go to the question and answer period.
And please remain muted as well during the process until the Q&A at the end. Rabbi, you may need to remind some people so I don't speak over you and Steve, because I am going to mute myself in a moment.
Okay, I think, Lynn, you may have the ability as co-host to mute people who are on by accident.
Yes.
You can just hit mute on their this
And
side of the screen.
it seems like some people are not sure how to turn off their video.
Yeah, so on the lower left corner of your screen, if you're on a computer device, it'll be all the way on the bottom left. It will say stop video. So you just you hit that. There we go.
Oh,
A few more people hit that. You see lower left, it says stop video. You just hit that. And you know what? If a couple people can't do it, it's okay. We'll just keep going. I want the focus, of course, to be on Steve Tamber because he is our special guest tonight.
In addition, folks, you can go to speaker view when we start, and that will enable you just to focus on the speakers as opposed to the black boxes with all our names.
Right. I may do that myself because I will get distracted as well. So I'm not going to look at everyone right now. I'm going to leave that to Lynn as co-host. And if we're ready, I'm going to begin, and we can continue to let people in though. So welcome to the Torah of Our Lives, which is a production of Temple Sinai of Palm Beach County. I am Rabbi Aviva Bass. I'm going to take off my glasses because of the glare. And I welcome everyone, both members of our congregation, as well as guests, as well as people who will maybe view this even later. We're now broadcasting live to YouTube, but it will also be recorded for later on. And if people don't have the opportunity to see it, they can view it later on. We have a special guest tonight, as we do every week. What my premise is in this Torah of Our Lives series that I'm hosting, the premise is that we each carry within us wisdom that we've accumulated from our lives. We each are dealt different cards, whatever we're dealt with in our lives, and we can't necessarily control what cards we're dealt, but we can control how we respond to them and also what we can learn from them. And it's those lessons and those interesting stories that have captivated me as a rabbi. I feel very blessed to be a rabbi because one of the things that I love so much about the rabbinate is that I have the opportunity to meet so many different people and to learn from them myself. But I felt, this is kind of a very sad thing that rabbis and other clergy get to hear all of this, but it doesn't necessarily get shared. And so I have invited our membership, who are so wide-ranging in terms of their previous professions. Some of them are still working, but people who have retired from various professions, people who have lived all over the world, who have grown up with all different types of Judaism, and some who have grown up outside of Judaism and chosen Judaism later on in their lives. So this is an opportunity to learn about what people have accumulated in terms of their wisdom and their relationship with God, however they feel that or define that or understand that, if they understand it at all. Some people don't believe in God, and that's fine too. And we can still learn from their accumulated wisdom as well. So tonight, our special guest is Steve Tamber, And I would like to invite him to join me on the screen. Let me see if I can view him. If I put this on gallery view, yep, now I can see him. Okay, welcome, Steve. I'm so happy to have you here with us tonight.
Thank you.
Do
And
you
we're
wanna say
actually,
hello?
Lori and I are glad that we are with you tonight, considering what was going on here in Houston over the last 2 weeks and how cold and awful it was. So we're very happy to be with you tonight.
Yes,
Lori.
we're so happy. Yeah, yeah. So Steve and Lori did live in Delray Beach very recently and were members of Temple Sinai and still have remained members of Temple Sinai despite the fact that they have moved away. But one happy byproduct of the pandemic, if you can call it a happy byproduct, is the fact that we have all learned how to do this technology and Zoom with one another. And so Steve and Lori are still active members of Temple Sinai despite their distance. So I'm very happy to have you here tonight. So Steve, the first thing I just want to mention, someone is sharing a screen.
Apparently what happened, Rabbi, is Irving, whoever Irving is, went to screen sharing.
Okay, so let's say that sharing screen is not, this will stop others screen sharing. Yes, I will stop others screen sharing. And let's see. Only host. Let's do that. Okay, so only the host can share a screen. You're not going to share a screen tonight, right?
That's correct. That's
okay,
correct.
So just yourself. And we get to see your smiling face and hear your stories. Before we begin, before I forget, I want to thank you and Lori for your generous contributions to Temple Sinai of time, energy, and resources. And in terms of resources, you have chosen to be sponsors of our virtual gala that is upcoming and have made a generous contribution. So I want to thank you for that generous contribution. And I want to thank everybody who have already donated to our virtual gala, which will be the evening of Saturday, March 13th. It will be broadcast at 8 p.m., but also available thereafter. And if you wish to be a sponsor, there are still sponsorship opportunities available if you call the Temple at 561-276-6161. And anyone there will be happy to talk to you about a sponsorship opportunity because it's a wonderful thing to do. So thank you to the Tambers for doing so.
You're quite welcome.
Yes. So I'd like to start by asking you, Steve, about your upbringing. And I know from having spoken to you, as I do with all of our interviewees prior to the time, I know your story somewhat, and I know that you were turned off by your particular conservative Jewish upbringing. And I wanted to utilize that as a story that perhaps we could learn from, because as we go on here, I just made a pitch for financial contributions, and I'm asking you, what turned you off about your conservative synagogue upbringing, so that we can learn from that, so that we don't make the same mistakes. So go ahead, tell us what your experience was.
Well, the Hebrew school experience was rather limited. It consisted primarily of playing football outside our small shtibel, a storefront shul in Briarwood, Queens, with the Hebrew school teacher. And it consisted, and I'm not sure if my friend is on, but she sat in front of me, so we know each other a long time. And she had these cute little pigtails, and I would spend the time pulling her pigtails. And that was the extent of my Hebrew school education. I really didn't learn a heck of a lot. The usual Bible stories. What else can you teach 10, 11, and 12-year-old kids when they come from school? It's kind of a hard thing to do. But that having been said, for some reason, and even today, I'm not sure why, after I became a bar mitzvah on November 17th, 1956, if anybody wants to do the math, please do. But I wanted to stay. There was something about the congregation as a whole, even if I really didn't learn a heck of a lot, that said, well, I think I really want to stay and become a member or stay a member. My folks had just started a new business in the area. And so, of course, they called and said, how much are the dues? And they were told. And they said, well, we can't afford it. So, of course, the powers that be at the synagogue said, take a hike. And I did. And that was essentially what had happened with the money. And of course, that carried through for quite some period of time. I did not set foot into a congregation until we joined after we came back from our first trip to Israel in 1979. I refused to do it.
Right.
And I actually was rather hostile. And I don't think we talked about this, but I will now. I was at an unveiling with a cousin of mine, and she said to me quite seriously, why don't Jews bring flowers to the cemetery? And I looked at her and I said, easy, Alex, they're too cheap. And that was the first experience. And then our son was about 3 or 4 months old, and my parents and Lori's parents were at our home in Plainview, New York. We were living at the time. And my mother was so excited. She said, I can't wait for the bar mitzvah. And I looked at her and I said, what bar mitzvah? And so you can see how it all flowed from that. Now, of course, I will tell you, Lori was not terribly happy about that, to be sure. But as time went on, my uncle, my mother's brother, was awarded an Israel Bond Breakfast award at a temple in Westchester. And I was asked to attend, and he was my favorite uncle. And I absolutely refused. I would not set foot into a synagogue. Absolutely not.
Wow.
My parents had asked us to attend on a Friday night at Temple Emmanuel in New Hyde Park, New York. And I had to say no to my parents. I would not go into a synagogue. So you could see that my experience was not a positive one. And it continued for a long time, but that's not where I am now.
Right. So we'll get to that in just a moment, but but I want to emphasize this because actually a lot of young people are unfortunately turned off by Judaism, by this idea of what is sometimes termed pay to pray. And certainly for high holidays, many synagogues, including our own, sell tickets. There are tickets that are, this is part of a synagogue's budgetary revenue, a very big part of revenue for the budget. And we have to keep the lights on and the roof over our heads. And I didn't understand that as a young person myself in college. It was only later when I became a rabbi and I saw these budgets and how they're put together that I understood the need for some financial contribution and the idea of membership. But nevertheless, we do not turn people away for inability to pray at Temple Sinai. And I would say that most ethical congregations will not do so either, will not turn people away if they genuinely cannot afford membership. They'll work with them and make some kind of arrangement or use other people's donations to help to offset the costs that family cannot contribute. But I think that it is important that we learn from your experience. So later on, when we go to how you became part of a synagogue board and even became president, how you took your experience and what you learned from it and how you were able to channel that into the work that you did. But we're going to hold off on that because I do want to hear how you got from point A, which was so hostile to Judaism, to how you got to becoming a synagogue board member and board member of other Jewish organizations. So the first thing I wanted to discuss is this trip to Israel with Lori, because I know that was part of what helped your Jewish growth to emerge. So tell us about that.
True. Lori and I in 1979 had planned to make a trip to Hawaii. And our next door neighbor, who was our travel agent, came in and said, you know what, I got a better idea. You can always go to Hawaii. I want you to go to a young, vibrant place. And I said, sounds terrific. Where? And I think Lori set it up. I really do. So he said, Israel. I said, not on a bet, not happening. Stop bothering me. I'm not doing it. Lori said, I want to go. So guess what? We went. So we get on El Al Airlines, and I made the mistake, and I was a smoker, pipe smoker. We're sitting in the smoking section next to a woman who smoked all the way, and I didn't know how to say in Hebrew, stop smoking. And I couldn't ask her anyway, because we were in the smoking section. So I have to tell you, Lori was about ready to throw me out the door of the plane, because every time the Orthodox folks went to the back of the plane because the sun was going up and the sun was going down, and they went back to pray, I was going nuts, because this is not who I was. I was very, very uncomfortable. But we got there. And those folks know how to start the manipulation process. The plane is coming in to Ben Gurion, and all of a sudden I start to hear Hatikva, you know, and it starts to catch a little bit. Not much, just a little bit. We get off the plane and we get to the baggage place, and there's a plaque to the victims of the Lod Ben Gurion massacre. And that was another part of it that said, you know, maybe this is okay. But then this was a Thursday. Friday, the guide announces, we're all going to Shabbat dinner and having Shabbat services, right? I said, Lori, really, we need to get back on the plane and go home. No, I'm serious. It's really true. And I said, I don't do chicken and manischewitz at home. I'm not doing it here. It was terrible, but I survived. But then the best part, Lori has family in Israel. And so we met up with the family. And that started, if you will, the conversion process. Because I found them to be wonderful people, warm. We had never met before. I don't think, had you met them before? No, Lori had not met them before either. And that was the context in which the trip started. And it actually got better from there, but it was secular in nature. This wasn't a religious experience, okay? So, I mean, we did the usual stuff, but one of the things that impressed me the most is we stayed at Kibbutz HaGoshrim in the Golan for a couple of nights. And during that period of time, we went up to the heights themselves, and we visited the former Syrian gun emplacements. And we learned from our guide that this is one of the reasons that nobody's given the Golan back, even though there's an early warning system on Mount Hermon and so on, but we can't give that back. And I started to understand a little bit more about what it was about. Again, not the spiritual, not the religious. This was just the secular aspect of, hey, you know, maybe there's something to the fact that we Jews should have a passport in case we have to leave, right? And we have a place to go, and that's how it started. So one night, and this is my antipathy to religion at the time, we had a friend who had stayed with us at Fort Campbell, Kentucky for about a month before he went to Korea. And seeing Lori in all stages of, you know, pajamas and everything else, no big deal. But when he finished the service, he went to study in Yerushalayim at a yeshiva on the GI Bill, and he became Haredi. And so we went to visit him in Mea Shearim. And we stopped to buy a bottle of wine before we went. And we spoke to the guy in the wine store who could have been my grandfather. And we looked at the hechsher, and he looked at the hechsher, and we explained everything, where we're going. I bring the wine, and Steve, that's his name, is now Shimon, said to me, not so much, it's not my rabbi. And I'm looking at him, I'm saying to myself, what kind of mishigas is this? I bring him a wine, and he's looking at the rabbi. I mean, can you imagine what would happen if somebody brought me a bottle of wine and I said, Rabbi Aviva didn't sign this? I mean, you know, that would not have been me. And of course, his wife now, because it's hot and there was no air conditioning in this apartment, Ruchel, his wife, brings Lori a long sleeve sweater because she was wearing short sleeves.
Mm.
Yeah? And we're talking now, he wants to serve cake, but he can't figure out what blessing to make. Now I really think he's gone nuts. He also was an avid photographer, and he stopped taking pictures. So his parents could not see the grandchildren. So you can imagine what kind of impact this is all having on me. And then he said, you know what? I think tomorrow I'd like to invite you and Lori for dinner, and we'll take you to the wall. I'll go with you to the wall for services. And I'm thinking to myself, how do I get out of this? I don't pray anyway. Now I'm going to go to the wall to be in a sea of Haredi men praying at the wall. I said to Lori, the only thing I knew about Judaism is that I told Lori to tell Ruchel she was having her period. Once she said that, Ruchel said, maybe we'll make dinner another time. All right. So we did not go. But that was the whole experience. There was nothing about that trip in and of itself that was a spiritual awakening, not even going to the wall, frankly.
Culturally, it called to you in terms of your connection to Israel and your desire to preserve Israel as a Jewish state that we could always flee to if we needed to.
Absolutely true. So that was the trip, and that's how it started. And interesting enough, toward the end of the trip, Lori and I were in the old city. We were in the Arab quarter, and we were passing by a store, and I saw in the store a replica of the wall, a small gold replica with a chai in it. And I have worn that consistently every day since 1979. And go figure.
Right. So it had some impact on you.
None that I would have admitted at the time.
Right.
Okay?
But something must have penetrated, because you could have gotten any piece of jewelry or any memento, but you chose something that was with the wall.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
And on the back of it, in Hebrew, it says, if I should forget you, O Jerusalem.
Oh, right, right.
So go figure. But that's the story of the trip to Israel and how it impacted me, at least culturally at that point, secular.
But then you came back, and I know that you read some books and encountered people that changed your feeling along the way. So can you tell us a little bit about what helped to open yourself up to the spirituality that exists in Judaism?
Well, and I can't tell you now, looking back, how I came upon this book. I don't know. But Rebbetzin Esther Jungreis of the Jungreis family was a rather prominent lecturer in New York at that time. And I guess I must have come upon her book somehow, and it was called The Jewish Soul on Fire. And while I didn't agree with a lot of the things that she said, because they were frankly overly simple approaches to Judaism, it's, God said, and this is what you have to do. I found that to me was like juvenile Judaism. And I had some problems with it, as you can imagine, but I read through it and I struggled with it. And that book led me to another book, and eventually, and I'm sure we'll get to this at some point when we talk about the relationship to God, two things. Harold Schulweis was one, Rabbi Harold Schulweis, and the other who really informed, I think, my theology more than anybody else was Rabbi Harold Kushner. Okay, so those books helped me start to examine where I was on the Jewish spectrum.
Okay, let's put a pin in that. I do want to get back to the theology, and we will discuss.
I know we will.
Yeah, because I do want to for our viewing audience, they may not be familiar with Kushner or Schulweis, so we will give a little précis of what each of them basically the basis of their theological arguments. But let's get back to how you went from really being so resistant, you would not even go to a synagogue if invited by a family member for a very important event. You would not even step foot in it. To then, some years later, becoming active as a board member of synagogues and of other Jewish institutions. So how did that evolve? How did you become, first of all, active members of a synagogue?
Well, we joined, of course, when Mike was, it was time for Mike to go to Hebrew school, because I lost the argument. That wasn't an argument. Laurie said, "You want to stay married? He's having a bar mitzvah." All right.
Okay.
You win. You win.
Right.
So we joined a synagogue. And shortly after that, I said to Laurie, you know what? We no longer have our grandparents. Maybe we should make a donation for pew plaques and put up 4 pew plaques in the congregation. So we did. The next thing I know, I get a call from somebody, and they said, you know, it's very nice you made a donation. Great. We'd like you to go out to lunch with the power behind the throne. He wants to talk to you about becoming a board member. That's how it happened.
Wow.
So then the next thing I knew, they asked me if I would present an Israel Bond Breakfast Award to 2 people in the congregation. And they said, your friends, Bill and Elaine. I said, I don't know who Bill and Elaine are. I don't know anything about them. How am I going to speak about them? Because as the MC, I had to say something. So I started to research. I asked questions. I looked at their history at the temple. And so that Sunday morning, I got up and I presented them with the Israel Bond Breakfast Award. And people thought I had known them for years. And they actually became fast friends. And they were also responsible for getting me actively involved in the temple. And that's how it happened. And so I wound up on the board. I think in retrospect, the congregation was not overly happy because I voted against a project that the rabbi wanted. And so, but that's a whole different story for another time when don't have all these folks here. So, but
yes, I'd love to hear that story. But
it was wonderful.
Yeah, so you became involved on the board, which is really already a big step. But then you also became involved in terms of some of the Bima leadership when the rabbi was away or for other occasions. Can you tell us a little bit about
different congregations, but yes. In addition to which, at about the same time, the president of the community, North Nassau, which was Nassau County, New York, North Nassau Community Council, which was an organization that consisted of 36 member organizations, temples and Ys, JCCs and all that thing. He died, unfortunately, very suddenly. And I got a call and they said, we'd like to talk to you. About what? We've seen what kind of work you do on the board. We would like you to become the president of the North Nassau Jewish Community Council.
That's huge. Yeah.
And I didn't know enough to say no. So, Louis Brandeis had the same problem. It was always difficult for him to say no. And then you just get overwhelmed. So I did that. And then when we left the congregation where we had gotten involved and started joined a new congregation, it was at that point where I started to fill in as the rabbi. And that's where the bar mitzvah officiation came in, but that was the second congregation.
And by that time, did you know much in terms of the liturgy of Judaism? Were you able to read Hebrew? Were you able to recite any of the prayers?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that. And I had forgotten to mention this to you. Because of the politics of the Department of School Education in New York, I was supposed to go to one high school because they had Hebrew. So I continued to take Hebrew. The book we used was Ivrit Chaya, and it was a conversational text, which we used. But then they fooled us and they got a Hebrew school teacher in the school I didn't want to go to. But I had continued up through my junior year in high school speaking Hebrew. And I was reasonably fluent. Good. Yeah. So I didn't have a problem reading Hebrew, certainly when it was vowelized. That was easy. And so, yes, I had no problem with the liturgy. Certainly I could research and find things to talk about, as I will on Saturday with the golden calf. But, it's that kind of stuff. It wasn't that difficult. I found it interesting because it was a lot like the law. Once you started reading, you closed the circle, and one thing led you to another. So I didn't really have a problem with that. And I was on the bima all the time. As a matter of fact, our congregation, the rabbi did not wear a yarmulke or talis, and nobody else did.
So it was a classical reform.
Classical reform until I got on the bima. And my first Shabbat on the bima, there I was with a yarmulke and a talis, and I was not exactly welcomed with that outfit, to be sure. And I also instituted kashrut in the Reform congregation.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was interesting, but I moved the congregation along because I always felt if we're a synagogue, then we should act like a synagogue. And so you can imagine some of the things that I tried to do were not very popular, but that's what I did. And that's how it happened.
Well, I'm sure with your background of having been turned off about Judaism and of all of the turned off about the religious aspects of Judaism, you could relate to those who were resistant to the changes you were making.
Easily. Easily.
Right.
Easily.
So it's a lot different than someone like, say, the Haredi people that you had visited while you were in Israel. Who were like, this is the way it is. It wasn't that you were pushing it down their throats as much as, I would think, as much as an invitation, understanding and validating where they're coming from, but also saying, this is something that is can be a welcome change.
Well, if you want to look at it that way, that's okay. But but no, I was very firm about it because I felt there was something.
You tick people off.
Right. I mean, clearly. But that led, of course, we shortly after I became president, we had to let the rabbi go for some financial improprieties, and that's all I'm going to say. And so we hired a fifth-year rabbinical student who was a student at the Academy of Jewish Religion, and she was extremely difficult. She had a lot of trouble with strong women, and we had a lot of strong women on the board. And so there came a point in time where we had 12 B'nai Mitzvah that were scheduled, and 9 parents said, no way, we want you to do it.
Wow.
So I actually officiated that year at 9 of the 12 B'nai Mitzvah as the rabbi. And when we went to the various places, because we were in a church at the time, I never said that I was a rabbi, and I never said I wasn't. Right? And people would come up to me after the service, say, "So, Rabbi, that was wonderful." I said, "Thank you so much." And that's how it went. But it was very effective. And I had a great time, which led, of course, to some of the other things that I'm sure you'll ask about as we go on.
But I do want to talk about 2 pieces that you mentioned to me about this period of time when you were officiating for all of these B'nai and B'not Mitzvah. And you had 2 experiences, one which is more intellectual, one which is more spiritual. I want to ask you about the spiritual first, which is a moment that you experienced while performing the priestly benediction. So I was hoping that you would share that about that moment with us.
This is something that Lori and I, we actually got from a cantor friend of ours, but I called it a shehechiano moment. Right? Totally inexplicable, but it was a twilight bar mitzvah. It was actually a twin bar mitzvah. The boys were a year apart, but the temple said they would do the B'nai Mitzvah at the same time. So it was a twilight bar mitzvah. The lights were dimmed. We had just finished Havdalah, a little early, but we finished Havdalah. And service, midway through the service, of course, it's the priestly blessing. And I did the appropriate Spock routine, the whole thing. And at that moment, as I was reciting the priestly blessing and the cantorial soloist was singing, I felt the best way to describe it was a jolt of electricity. From where? We could talk about it. We've talked about miracles or miraculous stuff, but there was such a spiritual feeling, and it was long lasting. It was better than having a couple of vodkas and lasted for a long time. It was truly amazing. It really was.
Wow.
That was the spiritual experience, and similar experiences doing. And I think some of the folks are on tonight. I did an unveiling for one of my friends' parents, and similar thing at the cemetery. The same kind of reaction. Doing that kind of prayer for somebody else, So that was the spiritual aspect.
Had you ever felt that before? Not necessarily in a Jewish context, but that feeling of spiritual connection. Had you been aware of that in your life?
Maybe only when the kids were born.
Mm-hmm.
But
that will do it to you. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of does that. Or grandchildren, as the case may be. But not that I recall. I mean, we've had other experiences, like hiking in East Hampton, and you come out of the woods and you see the lighthouse, and it's just a beautiful day, and that's a shehechianu moment.
Right.
As we discussed last week or the week before, you don't have to be in the sanctuary to have spiritual experiences.
Of course.
Yeah. Right. And so that was one of them. But of course, the one I did have was clearly the one on the bima at intoning the priestly blessing.
Right. So that's the spiritual piece of it.
Yep.
The intellectual piece was something you shared with me about a wonderful metaphor that you came up with when delivering a speech to a bar mitzvah. Yeah.
This young man was a problem child, in the sense that he wanted to be in Hebrew school as much as I had when I was going, so I could relate to him. And I had to figure out a way to reach him, because I was also helping in the bar mitzvah prep. So I knew he was a sports person. He played every sport, and he was apparently, from his parents, he was good at it. So I asked him in my devoir, I said to him, so would you go out on the football field or the baseball field if you were coaching or playing without reading the rule book? And he looked at me and he said, of course not. How can you possibly do that? I said, if you were a referee, would you go out with just the flags and a whistle, but you wouldn't have read the rules? How would you officiate the game? He said, you're absolutely right. I said, good. That's the reason for reading the Torah. That's God's playbook. And that's the way I explained it to him. The leader of the choir, the musician, said that he was so delighted to hear that, he asked me to reprise it for his kid's bar mitzvah. And after that, I refused to do it again because it's lost the impact. But I did it twice, once, which was the initial time, and then once for the choir master's son as well.
So here are a few different elements that together make this picture of someone you were becoming inside, internally, Jewishly, that is spiritually connected to the liturgy of the Jewish liturgy, and connected to students, to kids, being able to relate through everyday metaphors and to bring Torah into their lives in a relevant way. So all of this builds a picture of a potential Jewish professional. So you shared with me that at one point you did think about the rabbinate. So tell us about that, and why you are not sitting in my seat right now.
Well, I will tell you, I'll come to that, but I hope my daughter is listening, because I want to echo something that she told me when I had a similar conversation with her. When she got her doctorate in Hebrew Bible, I said, well, honey, now why don't you consider going to become a rabbi?
Hmm.
She said, I would make a terrible rabbi.
Hmm.
I said, why is that? And she said, because if a congregant came to me with a problem, I would tell him to get over it. And so, and so that's kind, here I was practicing law, dealing with people's problems. And I was really thinking a pulpit rabbi job would not be good for me. Academically, that might have been a good idea. But I just started a new practice with a longtime friend of mine. And obviously, when you start to practice, things are slow and it takes time for it to go. Lori was working full time, and we had the 2 kids. And I called Academy of Jewish Religion and I said, this is my story. This is what I'd like to do. I'd like to go to rabbinical school. They said, well, with all of your community activities, we can give you credit. I said, that's great. But what's the catch? And the catch was 1 year in Israel. And we just couldn't economically and in a sense of family to have me leave Lori and the kids, and she couldn't do her job, and we couldn't take the kids out of the school that they were in. So that's why I did not. But I will tell you, I'd given some thought over time, and I'd actually discussed this, and I think Sid is on as well with Sid Bortel, about the 2 of us perhaps at some point doing private smicha, because neither one of us were planning on getting a congregation, so you're safe.
That's funny.
Right, but the fact is that somehow it never happened. But I get a great deal of fulfillment with the Torah study and my own reading. And I will touch on something else because I know one of my friends is on, and I want to touch on something that I've done because of conversations I've had with her. So.
Do you want to do that now so we don't forget it later?
Sure, I will. Because in terms of studying, my friend came up with Sparky. I know Bill and Karen through the sheriff's office, and they are both very, very observant Christians. And I had the best call that I had ever gotten about 2 or 3 weeks ago, because they're taking a class on the 10 Commandments with a rabbi. And I felt that if they were taking a class on something that was inherently Jewish, I should start looking into the Old Testament and the New Testament, I'm sorry. And I just bought a book, which I have just opened and started to read, written by Amy Jill Levine, who is a New Testament scholar. I just started to read it. So when Karen and I have conversations in the future, we'll be able to come at it from the same angle. And I think, to me, that's wonderful, because it bridges a gap which is often missing when people from different backgrounds try to have a conversation, because they're so rooted in what they believe that they can't see that there may be another interpretation. So, Karen, that's what I'm doing, true. And we're going to have a good time.
Yeah, that's true, with different perspectives about many things.
Yeah.
We know about that with the political situation in our country, but religiously also, it's important to understand where somebody else is coming from, to be able to converse intellectually, to be able to do that. So let's talk about what you were doing professionally at the time that all of this was going on. You were a practicing attorney, and even within your life as an attorney, you turned to scriptural lessons to help you as you were dealing with various pieces of your work. So could you tell us a little bit about those couple of the ones that meant the most to you, those pieces of the lessons of the Torah?
Sure. When people came to me, I did a lot of immigration work, which I think that you are aware. So people would come to me, and the one question they always wanted to know was, will I get my green card? And so, if it was a busy week, that was one thing. If it wasn't such a busy week, that was another thing. But I always kept in mind that you don't put a stumbling block in front of a blind man. And each client that came in was a blind man as far as the law was concerned. And I never allowed a client to push me into taking a case that I felt was marginal. I developed what I called the Steve Tamber 85% rule. If I wasn't 85% sure, I wouldn't take it. And they said, well, why 85%? 5%, maybe the adjudicator didn't like the case. 5%, maybe you haven't told me the truth about your background. And 5%, maybe I'm not as smart as I think I am. So I always left room so nobody could turn around and say, you took this case under false pretenses. That was one. The other one, I think, came out of a case I was working on with a friend of mine. We were negotiating to sell a business. And the important part of the business was the two owners. And the buyer wanted the owner to stay. Now, the subtext here is that the buyers were Chabadniks, and so was the lawyer. And that's relevant to the story. So they said to us, well, you know, it's very important that your guys stay. And if they don't stay because they leave, they don't want to do this anymore, or they die, we don't want to pay. So I said, you don't want to pay who? He said, well, we don't want to pay the widows. So, of course, the light bulb went on. And I said, let me ask you a question. I said, I'm a Reformed Jew. I'm not all that knowledgeable. I said, but you guys obviously are very knowledgeable. What does the Torah say about how you treat women and orphans? And the lawyer looks at me and says, okay, we won't ask for that anymore. And that's what happened. He withdrew it because they tried and it didn't work. So those two things I always thought were very important, particularly for me. Don't put a stumbling block in front of a blind man.
Right. But I will take exception at one sentence you said, which was, I'm a Reformed Jew and I'm not all that knowledgeable. Those two things don't necessarily coincide. There are many Reformed Jews who are knowledgeable.
You know what? And I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that. But my intent was to be as self-effacing as I could and try to catch him with his pants down, and I did. So that was the point.
Exactly.
But you're right. I agree with you. There are a lot of Reformed Jews. For example, my friends, the Wartels, you know, among many others. So
absolutely. So let's go back to the theological discussion. So you did mention Harold Kushner as well as Harold Schulweis, the two Rabbi Harolds. So why don't you, first of all, for our viewing audience, if they don't know either one in their theology, if you could give them a little bit of a background.
Sure. Yeah, I took the opportunity to make some notes on each one. Figured you might ask about that.
Yes, so, I can fill in some if you get lost. Yes,
so
certainly.
Schulweis wrote, for those who can't believe, overcoming the obstacles to faith. And he quoted a 19th century rabbi, for the believer, there are no questions. And for the non-believer, there are no answers. This aphorism is unsatisfactory to Schulweis, who opined that he has come to know many believers with profound doubts and many unbelievers with a yearning for serious answers. Now you can see why that impacted as it did. So that's Harold Schulweis. Now, of course, our friend Kushner wrote a book when bad things happen to good people after his son passed away at a young age, being quite sick. And the three things that I took away from that is he finds if there is a God, he can't actually protect good people from bad things happening. People around you are quick to offer explanations for why bad things happen, but they're often wrong. Think the book of Job and Job's friends. It's more important to figure out how to respond to suffering than to figure out what caused it. And that also resonated with me. So those two guys have really informed my sense of Judaism and my theology.
Right. I'll just mention a couple of other things about each of them. Schulweis had what is called predicate theology. He believed in, rather than thinking of a personal God in terms of a being with a capital B. He felt that the way that he conceived of God is as the predicate, meaning verb. And there are also other books that have come out since then. David A. Cooper wrote a book called God as a Verb. But
Yes, I read
in any case, yeah, oh, okay.
I read it.
In any case, Schulweiss's idea is that instead of saying where is God, it's when is God, and God is in doing various things. So God is in the healing presence of the doctor, or in various actions that we see in the world. So that's just a little bit of Schulweiss. And then in terms of Kushner, when bad things happen to good people, he is very much a believer in a personal God, but the personal God is not an omnipotent God, not all powerful, but is all good. So omnibeneficent, but not omnipotent. So it's very interesting. Those are two, a little bit different views of God and of how we can feel God in our lives. So let me ask you this, rather than asking you an intellectual question.
Okay.
When have you felt God and God's presence in some way in your life, besides that moment that you shared with us? And what is your current feeling of relationship with God, if any?
Okay, so as any good lawyer, I can I have to object to the form of the question.
Okay.
Okay. A, because it's leading, and
Okay.
B,
I'm leading the witness.
because it assumes facts, not in evidence.
Okay.
So, all right. That having been said, I think you and I have danced around this question a couple of times in Torah study and so on.
Yes.
I am a Schulweiss guy. I'm still looking for answers. Right? Now, of course, we've also talked about the fact that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Right?
I love that quote. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, we understand there are things, and we talked about this last week, week before, when we talked about the Sphirot, we talked about Ein Sof. You could have knowledge, you could have wisdom, you can have understanding, but there are certain things that we just can't know. So it would be difficult for me to say, and Lori quipped this the other day when we were walking, I said, I don't know how I'm going to answer the rabbi's question about my relationship with God, because frankly, he hasn't let me know. Right? And that's an issue. And I'm not trying to be flippant. It's very difficult when you're talking about I have to think of the right word. When you're talking about a concept that is so amorphous. But that having been said, there's something that still keeps me rooted to Judaism and the study and everything else, whether it is a God, whether it's a supreme being. I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. That's as candid as I can be.
Right. And you've also described to me your visits to concentration camps. And I was wondering if that connects to any of your either doubts or feeling of yearning for answers, if that connects with that at all.
Well, yeah, thank you for that question, because it relates to what we did, I think 2 years ago at a Sundays at Sinai program. And we showed the film God on Trial.
Oh, right.
Remember that? Yeah.
Yes.
And so the folks who were at the concentration camp arguing, so who's at fault? Sure, it creates doubt. Because if God is all-knowing and omnipotent and a good God and a protective God, was he, and again, I don't mean to be flippant, but the question is, was he asleep at the switch during the Holocaust? You know? And of course, there's always the argument of free will, and Hitler and the Germans did what they did because they could. But I don't know if that's satisfying to me. But I will say this, that if there is a God, that God was present in the spirit of the kids from Boca Raton, whom we saw both at Auschwitz and Birkenau. Because those kids wrapped themselves in the flag, the Israeli flag, and they sat on the railroad tracks where the railroad cars used to come in to Birkenau before the selection process. And they sang, as I told you, Asa Einai, and they sang and they were saying, you know what, you guys lost, we're still here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other side of it. And I'm not a particularly emotional guy, but when those girls, they were primarily young girls from Boca, came out of the barracks, and that was another experience, came out of the barracks, they were crying copious amounts of tears, and that caused me to start tearing up because it was an experience. And the shoes, the baggage, the eyeglasses, the hair, the teeth, all in glass cases. And then we were escorted to the gas chamber and went into the gas chamber and then into the crematorium. No matter what you feel and your connection to Judaism, that has to make an impact. And it did, tremendous impact. This was a Jewish heritage trip. We also went to Theresienstadt as well. So it was not exactly an upbeat trip, but it was very powerful. Yeah. And yes, it does, as you asked, and I think it's a great question, it certainly contributes to doubt.
Right.
But I'm not giving up.
So let me ask a positive question. So sure. You've given so much of yourselves to your Jewish communities that you've been involved with, including our own, but the ones that you've mentioned now. What have you felt that you have received? What have you gotten from all of this Jewish involvement? How has Judaism sustained you and your family?
Well, certainly during the period of time when my partnership was breaking up, just at the time that I became president of the temple, it was an ideal situation. I pulled out the book of Psalms and I read, and that sustained me because I knew what had happened and I knew that I wasn't responsible, but I felt responsible and I needed some guidance, and I found it in the book of Psalms. So that's one. When certainly with our family, Karen and Ben first started their relationship in Pennsylvania, and they joined a congregation. Then they moved to Baltimore and joined a congregation. Then they moved to Nashville and joined a congregation. And now they're here and are very active. And Aviva, the younger, now goes to Hebrew Day School. She goes to Hebrew Day School. Ben went to Hebrew Day School until 7th grade. So that has sustained the family. They have always been rooted in the community, and it's basically through the Jewish community. And Lori and I as well. When we left Plainview and we went to live in East Hampton, that's where I was on the faculty. I was the only male on the faculty. When we came to Florida, we became members of Beth Am in Jupiter because our friend is a rabbi there. And when it got too much of a schlep, we met you at Lori's swearing in of NCJW president. Marsha London said we had to come and be members of the temple, so here we are. but
and we're glad you are.
Thank you. And so no, really, we have always been very comfortably rooted to a place in the Jewish community. Now, that's wonderful. What has Lori gotten out of it? What have I gotten out of it? I'll give it to you this way. When we were leaving New York, the Hebrew school faculty got together and gave me a Torah yad as a gift. And they thanked me for all the things that I had done for them. And I said, you have to understand something. I got out of this far more than I gave. I loved working with the kids. I loved being active in the Jewish community. I made friends with the rabbi and the cantor. It was very important. So whatever we give because we want to, but I get a lot out of it as well. For example, tonight, right? Yes, I'm giving to the congregation, but I'm also getting something out of it because I'm able to share my Jewish story.
Right. That's wonderful. Okay, so I have really monopolized this conversation. So remind me before we leave, though. I'm going to go into a Q&A with all our participants, but remind me if I forget to mention John Lennon. And I want to get back to John Lennon before we leave tonight. You're going to tell the John Lennon story, but why don't we bring in our participants? If you are blacked out, you can show your faces now, all of our participants. And
let me see all the happy faces.
And if you have a question, if you can if you know how to put your little computerized hand, there's on the bottom of your screen, you should see somewhere it says reactions. It's next.
Rabbi, somebody had asked whether they could see Zamira Esther. She's here.
Oh, there she is. Oh.
So, and she's accompanied by her very accomplished parents. Hi, guys.
Yes.
Look
So
quickly because she's going to need some attention in the diaper department.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Thanks, Ben.
Okay, we're so glad to see you. Mazel tov. Okay, so what I'd like to do is if you have a question, if you can put up your little, rather than physical hand, if you can put on your little computerized hand, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you should see in the middle, there's a green button that says share screen. And next to it, to the right, you should see something that says breakout rooms, and then you see reactions. If you press on reactions, if you click on that, it should open up and there should be the ability to raise your hand. And it's not your hand like this. It's a little icon of a hand. So if you can do that, and Rabbi, I will ask, I'm sorry.
Are you going to call on the folks?
I'm going to ask Lynn to do so because she'll be quicker on the draw, and then we can see.
Okay, let's start with Elaine Farber, please. Please unmute yourself, Elaine.
Hi,
Thank
Elaine.
you. Hi there.
How are you?
I'm just fabulous and delighted to have had this opportunity. Thank you so much for sharing a wonderful experience. One question.
Sure.
Since you were so anti-Jewish education, it was very interesting that when you went to high school at the age of 15.
Yeah, that I took Hebrew.
That you took Hebrew. What prompted you to do that if you were so anti being involved?
Self-preservation. Because nobody wanted to go to Richmond Hill High School. It was the center of some very large gang people. So all of us who were like small Jewish people, we all wanted to go to Jamaica High School because that was a safe place to go. But the city of New York fooled us. They found a Hebrew school teacher. So in Richmond Hill. So we were assigned to Richmond Hill, but I was already committed to continuing with Hebrew. So I did.
Yeah, but there was that experience didn't at all prompt you to explore more of your Jewish heritage?
Not at that time, no.
No.
I was so hostile that, because I looked at it as just another language. I did not look at it as something that was spiritually connected.
Again, thank you so much for—
You're quite welcome, and good to see you.
Yeah, take care. Mazel tov.
Okay, Jane Brown, please unmute yourself.
Yes, I am.
Hi, Jane.
Steve, I loved your talk tonight. I thought it was wonderful. I was mesmerized by so many of the things you were saying.
Thank you.
But there had to be a switch, an on-off switch, as we have said already. You were so hostile until Lori finally said, we won't be married if our son doesn't have a bar mitzvah. So you obviously joined a temple, but you couldn't just go from joining the temple to becoming active and president and leading bar and bat mitzvahs. How did you start? Did you start to go to services? What
Well, yes.
led you to that?
The fact is, first of all, it was a different temple when I became president and started to lead services. But that having been said, there was a requirement. And Lynn and I have had this conversation before, and I know the rabbi's listening. There was a requirement. If your kid was in Hebrew school, you needed to go to services. No doo-doo. You didn't go, your kid did not become a bar or bat mitzvah, shine and finished. So we went. And what was even more important is within the year of the bar mitzvah, you also had to go on Friday nights, and the week before you had to usher. And if you didn't want to do it, too bad. So that's the way it was, Rabbi. I mean, that's what they did. So, and it actually worked. We had parents who went, whether they wanted to or not, and that was the jumping off point. But the real trigger, the real switch, clearly was Lori. She wasn't brooking any nonsense. She said, that's the way it is.
But somehow you were led into the praying, into the davening, into the leading.
Yeah. I actually
the feeling grew and grew during those years.
I'm sorry?
So the feeling while all the time you were praying or davening or starting to lead things, the feeling just started to grow more in you?
Yeah, as we talked about earlier with that experience of doing the priestly blessing. I mean, it was really something. Unless you have led services and prayed on behalf of the congregation, it's difficult to comprehend how that works. So, I mean, I had received calls from Temple Beth Am in Jupiter when we were living in Florida that the rabbi was away. Could I come up and lead services? I mean, really a very, very meaningful experience, because you're just not, at least not for me, not just going through the motions, but you're actually praying on behalf of the congregation. If you're doing it right, that is. So that's the way I felt, you know. And so that was the switch for me.
Thank
and
you.
also, I'm afraid of Lori, and it turned out right, because she has a pension. How do you think I can live? So it turned out right. I think Judy Herman has a question.
Yes.
And then Doreen.
Yes.
Hi, Judy.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for sharing, and good to see you too, Lori. So when it came time to send your children to Hebrew school, you knew you hated all of that. You didn't enjoy any of it. How could you convince your kids to go and do this?
Oh, that was easy. When Karen went to Hebrew school, I was president of the temple. She had no choice.
Okay, you were ready.
Every Friday night, she knew the prayers even before she started to study them. Now, Michael's experience, I don't see Mike here, and he may be on the other screen, but I will tell you his experience was not positive at all. And Michael is not connected at all. But that's a whole different story. But he had a very, very unpleasant experience at that temple, the first one.
Much like you started out.
I'm sorry?
Much like you started out with an unpleasant.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I can certainly understand why he had the impression he had. I mean, it's easy. But Karen was an entirely different set of circumstances, because I became president of the temple in 1991, and she became a bat mitzvah in 94. So, and I was president for 3 years. So during that 3-year period, what choice did she have? So that was it. That's how that worked. But she had a much better experience, because by that time, we were very friendly with the rabbi, who, by the way, now Rabbi is the dean of HUC Cincinnati, Jonathan Hecht, and we became very friendly with Jonathan, and we're still friends. So the entire circumstance was different. It was non-threatening. Karen went all the way through confirmation, and it was much different.
Becoming a Torah scholar.
And a Torah scholar, yeah.
All the way through, every time in her life, from there.
Judy, how do you think I prepare for Torah study?
Oh, I bet you read your own stuff. But thank you so much. This has been
my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Doreen, hi.
Hi, Steve. Thank you very much. Your story was really very compelling on your path to embrace Judaism, and the fact that you went to see the concentration camps and all. I'm wondering, did you ever go back to Israel to deepen your feeling of Judaism?
We were there in 1979, the first trip, and we were back again in 1981. Not since then. We do have one that we're playing with, but I don't know. It's going to be part of a trip to Greece and Israel. I don't know if that's what we want to do, or we want to go on the ground and do something different, because I know that there have been so many different archaeological findings and things which I'm interested. So we haven't decided exactly when. I'm thinking 3 years from now, it would be a good time, because it's the change of another decade. So for me, so if I still have the koyach to go at 80, I'm going. That's it.
Okay.
Rebecca.
Thanks.
Rebecca will be next. Rebecca, unmute yourself.
Oh,
for
hi,
us.
Rebecca. Unmute, please.
Stephen,
Thank you.
it's just wonderful to hear an evolved person. You were so fortunate to be able to evolve and develop into who you are today. But what I wanted to know, when you were a young boy, did you have any Jewish friends?
Yes, there were, with the exception of maybe one or two, but they also either, well, they did not go to Hebrew school. They were from secular families. I mean, my family was basically secular, although we joined a conservative shul. So they certainly were not role models, if that's the sense of your question. So no, I didn't have a role model that I could follow. And it's really kind of funny in a way, because Lori and I met when I was 16 and she was 14. And on her father's side, right, your father's side, they're from the Soloveitchik rabbis. Well, it was a shanda when she met me. Yeah, so, and her grandparents on her mother's side also came from a rabbinic family. So, but
I had two friends whose parents weren't interested in Judaism at all. However, in school, they met a couple of very Orthodox girls, and they were so impressed with them that they became Chabadniks. So friends do have a great impact, I notice.
I have to tell you, Rebecca, I have to tell you a funny story about that.
Yes.
Many years ago, while I was president of the shul, the local Chabad rabbi wanted to come talk to us about Menachem Schneerson. So our Rabbi Hecht, said, "You can come, but don't proselytize and try to steal any of my members." Right? So who does he go after? Me. Right? How did that happen? Because I was representing one of his friends from 770 Eastern Parkway. So he calls one morning, and I recognized the sing-song accent. And he said, "I'd like you and your wife to come for dinner." Like in Israel, had the same problem. And I couldn't figure out a way out of it. So finally, smart guy, he calls one morning. I said, "Listen, Rabbi, I have to be perfectly honest with you. I don't look good in black." And really true story. And that was the end of he never called again.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the true story. That's what happened with the rabbi.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Does anybody else have any questions? Because I know the rabbi wants me to talk a little bit about John Lennon.
Yes.
And also, I did want to add one other thing, Rabbi. We're talking about the change. And I know Rebecca knows me from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, because I used to supervise her unit. But one thing I did, and of course, I was commander of the Honor Guard. And one of the things that was very important to me, because it's always more important to attend a funeral than a wedding. And I spoke at every funeral in the 3 years that I was commander of the Honor Guard, and most of them, unfortunately, were Jewish. But I spoke at every funeral to recognize what contributions those folks made to the community in which they served, because that was part of the Tikkun Olam. And I figured that the people would never know the difference. So I started to slip in at the end of the service, Zichrono Livracha. And, and all those people from PBSO looked at me and said, what is he talking about? but that was one of the important things I felt as a member of the Honor Guard to speak at all of the funerals and to recognize the contributions. So you want me to talk a little bit about Lennon?
Yes. So,
Okay.
So how did you meet John Lennon? And tell us a little bit about that, because actually I know a little bit about this story because one evening Scott and I decided to look at YouTube and see how many Johnny Carson bits that they had on there for interviews. And there's an interview on there with Yoko Ono in which she describes at this time in the 60s what Stephen is going to just tell you about now. So
yeah,
go ahead.
So John and Yoko came to the United States so she could obtain custody of children that she had from a prior marriage. And while they were here, they decided to apply for lawful permanent residence. And I had started working for this immigration law firm doing their non-immigration work. And one day the boss called me in and he said, how would you like to learn immigration law? I said, not really. And he said, well, I got a case for you to work on. I said, yeah, what's the case about? He said, there's this British guy who applied for his green card and he didn't get it. So I said, why didn't he get it? He said, well, he had a drug conviction in England. So I said, drug conviction, England, well, who is it? And he said, John Lennon. So he assigned the case to me to start doing research and start writing the papers. What we found, and the Jewish connection here, and I talked to the rabbi about this earlier, is, you know, when we study Torah, everybody gets justice the same way. We don't put the thumb on the scale. Richard Nixon obviously never went to Hebrew school and studied Torah. So what Nixon did, Nixon found out that Lennon was going to the Republican National Convention in Miami in 1972 to lead a protest against the war in Vietnam. Nixon was not happy. So he sent a note to John Mitchell, his then Attorney General, who you may remember went to jail. And we got that note in the discovery phase of the case. What did it say? Get him out. It's the executive interference with the Attorney General, even though they're all part of the executive branch. So the way they did it was to use the conviction in England. It was a drug conviction. The problem was, as we argued, that it offended our sense of due process. And that was the tzedek tirdof part of it. Justice, justice shall you pursue. So we pursued that. He was in a house at a house party. Somebody had drugs there. Obviously, the police were tipped off. They came, they raided the place. He was arrested. And I don't remember whether he entered a plea of guilty or was after trial, but that's what the Attorney General through the Immigration Service used to try to have him deported. The Circuit Court of Appeals in New York said, nope, we're going to give him his green card because that is a violation of our statutes. He could not have been convicted if he was in the house, if he was not in actual possession. Now, there are some states actually that have some different rules. If you happen to be in a car and there are drugs in the car, you got it. But that was the story with John Lennon. And he came to the office one day and everybody, all the young women were in the hallway lined up. And I said to my friend, what are they doing? They said, John Lennon is coming. I said, where? And here's this Nebuchadnezzar coming in, you know, with the funny glasses, the long hair, and he was smaller than I am. And I could not imagine that that was John Lennon, very unfriendly, but we all went in to look at the $25,000 retainer check on our boss's desk when he left. that was, and it wasn't signed by him. As I told the rabbi, it was signed by Apple Records. So that was the story of John Lennon and my introduction to immigration law back in the 70s.
No, very interesting.
Yep, that
Yeah,
was it.
very few people can say that they
Met
were
John
able-
Lennon.
met John, even just meet him, but also
Right.
to defend him in court. That's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah,
So,
it really was.
so thank you, Steve.
It was very interesting. And so that's my tale of woe, folks. Am I okay to do the Torah study on Saturday? Am I
Absolutely.
fired?
I give you
Okay.
a thumbs up. And you know what? I'm hoping that many of the people who've joined today, if you have not been to Torah study, you don't have to know anything about the Torah. You don't even have to possess a Torah because we usually have it right on the screen.
Right.
So all you have to do is come and listen and learn and share. And a lot of what we share with each other are really the Torah of our lives and how it intersects with what we're learning about the Torah text. So
Yeah,
Steve
I know
Tamber
Ina,
is
I know
our
Ina's coming, and I think Sparky is coming as well on
Okay.
Saturday. Once
Yeah,
we
so
send out the-
Saturday at noon, we always have Torah study Saturday at noon. And you can see on the website how to sign up for that. And once again, I do want to plug the gala, which is on March 13th in the evening. We have the best MC anywhere around. because it
you're
happens to
prejudiced.
be My
You're
husband, my husband Scott is emceeing the event. So it will be fabulous. And we are so excited about it. I've gotten sneak peeks into all of his little shtick in between different things, and you do not want to miss it. So definitely sign up for that. There's no donation required to be, there's no paywall to enter to be able to watch the gala. Of
Now
course,
you tell me.
any donation, any donation is welcome, but not necessary. So I hope you will join us for that and join us for our other programming. So thank you so much to everyone for coming tonight. Thank you
Thanks,
so
guys.
much.
I
to
appreciate
Steve,
you coming out tonight.
Tamber.
Thank you.
And it was so good to see the baby too.
Love seeing
Okay.
the baby.
Take care, everybody.
Okay,
Good
bye-bye,
night, everybody.
everybody.
See
Thank
ya.
you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you,
Right.
Steve.
Right,
Thank
bye-bye.
you, Steve.
It was wonderful.
All right.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you, Steve.
Enjoyed it a lot.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
See you Saturday.
Thank you, Rabbi, for doing this.
Thank you,
Thank
Lori.
you. Thank you. You're welcome.
All right.